And while I talk, I'm going to invite Cynthia Payne to come up on stage, as well as Cameron McPherson, Diana Horvatok, and Tim Humphries. Apologies if I got some names wrong, who are going to do our last panel for the day as we head into morning tea. I think this is quite an important conversation, Cynthia, that you're about to have, specifically around standalone mid-sized residential operators in the middle, looking at it from that lens of optimism, innovation, and insight. So I know we're tight for time. I'm going to hand over to you. This is going to be a fascinating conversation. I can't wait to hear it. So please, big round of applause for Cynthia and the panel.
And thanks everyone for joining our session today. As was mentioned, we have Cameron, we have Diana, and we have Tim. And I think when we had the opportunity to plan this session, I think the vision was to, I guess, provide a bit of focus on a hidden element of the conversation. So if I kind of reflect on some of the morning sessions today, we heard obviously from Grant, we heard from Cam Ansell, we heard obviously Chris's comments in terms of consolidation. So I don't know if my slide is coming up, but I just want to kind of touch on a few key data sets. So as of June 2024, in the large home care market, which we'll call the 20 plus aged care homes, we have 24 providers falling into that category, which is 2.9% of the market. For the medium homes, which is really our focus of the panel today, we're talking 6.9% of the market. There are 51 providers around the country. And then we see quite a change here in terms of small homes, 2 to 6 being 28.3% of the market, and the single home provider still being the largest market share with 459 providers. Now, team, I gave you a bit of a challenge as we wanted to open up a strategic conversation here today, and I wanted to give you space to touch on a few key points. So let's go to that. I'm not going to go to the other data set because we're tight for time. So Cameron, I'm going to start with you. Do you want to kind of start with your strategic landscape, what your pressing challenges are, and the 3 strategic actions that you feel are really important for providers operating in the middle right now?
So thanks, Cynthia. Look, as you said, Grant, Cam, Ian, and a lot of speakers this morning touched on what that strategic landscape looks like. We've had a huge amount of government reform, shifting consumer expectations. There is a workforce shortage in residential aged care, and there's a lot of consolidation, as we talked about. That's why we're here. That for us is the strategic landscape. As far as what we've been doing at Medical Aged Care Group, I set upon a strategic plan in, I think it would have been March of 2024. And that was to address probably many, but we'll talk about top 3. You said top 3. Well, we've only got half an hour.
I know.
So the first was workforce retention, workforce engagement, which is obvious. Makes sense. Second, preparation for the Act. And within that, though, we've been market testing and developing buckets of products and services and testing them for the higher everyday living fee. What makes sense for us? We want to be a value for money provider. So we've been road testing a lot of that internally, making sure we've got the right people in the right seats of the bus at Medical Aged Care Group to deliver those services, rain, hail or shine. Probably the third strategic pillar or action point, as you call it, is innovation. Everyone talks about innovation, but what the hell is that? We've been pushing that quite hard over the last 12 months. We've got a 3-year plan as well, and that's around tech and obviously digital transformation as well. So they're probably the 3 things that we're looking at. We could go on for hours on that.
And we're going to come back and unpack a couple of those.
Yep.
I'm going to come to you, Tim. Can you do your 2 to 3 minute pitch on those issues as well?
I'll shoot for 2. Look, I think for us, there's a couple of things. We had a strategic plan in place. I pushed the board to craft a new one. I think they must have been talking to Tom. They said, let's do that after July. So we've quite literally put it off, which I think is probably in the current environment not a bad thing. But the things that we're focusing on at the moment are, first of all, trying to shield our workforce from the amount of change that's coming at them so they can focus on providing care, which sounds like something we should all be doing, I think, because the amount of change that's being flung at the teams that we work with who we want to be focusing on care, which we know they can't always do. So that's a deliberate tactic we've employed. I think the other thing we've done over the course of the last few years is just refurbish all of our homes. We had 11 homes. We closed one. It was old, end of life. We have 9 homes that will survive this current tranche of work. And we're just refurbishing all of those because they're built, a lot of them are built around 2000. And if you've got a home that's built around 2000 and you're not refurbishing it, you should be, because it's going to die a horrible death if you don't. And I think the last thing that we've done, a little bit like Cam was talking about, and everyone's talking about rehabilitation and reablement. We've had a rehab program in for about 4 years now. We've seen some amazing results that come out of it, but you have to invest. It's not funded, right? So we've partnered with Concentric, and we've seen people come into our care and return home. So everyone talks about institutional care, and it's a horrible word, and we shouldn't use it. But the care we provide sometimes leads to people returning home. And we know for every one of the people we care for, we know they would rather be at home, and it's not in the care home that we run.
Yeah, it's a bit of the elephant in the room, right? Because it came even in the earlier conversation with home care, and we're not pitting one against the other, but it is an important conversation because the three of you as CEOs are literally operating in the middle. Now, Diana, you also operate in a culturally specific space, and the first CEO for your group being a female, I think that's actually culturally important. Do you want to give us your pitch in terms of your reflections strategically?
Thank you, Cynthia. It's great to be last because everything's been answered for you. But I'm very proud that I'm the first non-Greek female female CEO to actually be the head of a faith-based Greek organisation. So we predominantly provide older Greek care for Greek Australians and also consumers from culturally diverse backgrounds. But similarly to Cameron, my number one strategic priority is to actually remain compliant in a highly regulated environment and actually prepare our internal and external stakeholders to all the changes that are taking effect on the 1st of July. We also are striving to continue to deliver safe and quality care to all consumers and ensure that individuals' care needs and goals and preferences are actually adhered to. And lastly, ensure that we attract and retain a skilled and qualified workforce who share our vision, mission and values, and most importantly, have compassion and empathy.
One of the things that all three of you touched on is innovation. And I know, Diana, you've come out of a period of significant transformation for the organisation that you're leading, and I think that's true for Cameron and Tim as well. What do you want to talk about in terms of innovation for a medium-sized provider?
Okay, so for me, innovation and having worked for St Basil's originally as a consultant, it was about going back to basics and looking at what true innovation looks like. And for me, it was about working with consultants, specialists in the field, such as Anchor Excellence, but actually rebuilding the foundations. So for me, that was critical because without the foundations, you can't build. So innovation for us looked at what our current structure was and how it wasn't supporting frontline to be innovative. So some of the strategic actions that are being undertaken as a consequence is actually reflecting on our support services and either getting experts in the field to provide the direct support or additionally outsourcing some of that so that the key focus can be on actually delivering the care and services and supporting frontline in the quickest possible way to be able to keep up with all of the changes.
Financial viability is relevant for all three of you, and we heard Grant obviously this morning touching on, I guess, some of the draft policies being liquidity, and I just want to give space because for some people in the room, Tim, they might not fully appreciate how as a private sector provider operating in the middle, if we go to something as specific as a requirement for care minutes, how you're calculating those care minutes and some of the other features that come up that might not be top of mind, that you actually are competing in an unfair environment, if I can call it that way?
Well, I think the minister called us out, didn't she? I think that was quite explicit in a press release that she made, that those dirty for-profit metropolitan providers are not spending the money on care that we gave them. What she omitted to tell you was that we pay payroll tax. So if you were running a not-for-profit the same size as home sale aged care, your labour bill would be $5 million less than ours because we pay over $5 million in payroll tax in Victoria. And when you cap everything else and say, here's the amount of care you have to provide, it seems like a really weird situation we find ourselves in. And we're now working up towards the care minute targets. And in 2 of our homes that had the lowest care minutes, we're going to spend over $1 million in labour cost in those 2 homes. And I think the thing that annoys me a lot is the rhetoric and the language used by the minister particularly. She talks about creating a viable sector that will encourage private investment, yet the private sector has a significant disadvantage. So I don't know, we probably need to call it out a little bit, and just when we hear language like fully funded, we should actually say that's bullshit.
Yeah, okay. And Cameron, I know you feel similarly, so let's go to you.
Absolutely. Look, when we were preparing for this, there was some lively and colourful conversation, and I'm pleased that Tim is following on from that because there were some 4-letter words, and we are quite passionate about this. And we know in this room, and you would all know as well, that the payroll tax supplement was abolished in 2013. So it's no longer a level playing field. It's no longer a level playing field. And there's no plans to make it a level playing field either. And I think that's something that we've had a lot of consultation over the last 4 years, Tim and I in Canberra, and it's just not on the table. And we all need to aim for that 215 minutes and 44 minutes of RN. But what does that really mean with on one side of the fence, you've got salary package, and the other side of the fence, you're paying this payroll tax. So it's not a level playing field, is it, Tim?
Yeah, Diana, you, I think, like Cameron and Tim, have been on the end of a request for information for care minutes for the non-residential providers in the room. What has that meant for your business in terms of administration? And I mean, this is a strategic issue, right? Like, it's operational, it's tactical, but actually it draws you away from some of the other things that you might want to be focusing in on.
Absolutely. So since we're the most controversial panel, I totally agree. The care minutes and RN minutes are absolute bullshit. So as an ex-regulator, I just wanted to use the word as well. So as an ex-regulator, the debate about qualified skilled staff and whether or not we provide a ratio to, like the hospitals have finally done, has been since 2007 when I started. So all it's created is an extra burden on providers to actually have to monitor and comply with it. And in preparation for this panel discussion, I was reading really interesting articles that backdated to 2023. And if we look at just the number of residents that we have across all of our homes and the 43 minutes and how many RNs alone we have, there's an absolute shortage. So we are actually being set up to fail, okay?
Cameron, you go. I know Cameron leaned
Just
forward
further
first,
to
then
that,
you, Tim.
yes, thank you. Look, we've got 3 homes that are very small homes, and they've got that nice home feel. There's 45, 46 and 50 beds, beautiful little places. Before Christmas, we made 6 ENs redundant. Those 6 ENs work between 7 p.m. and 7 a.m. or 10 p.m. and 7 a.m., should I say, 10 p.m. and 7 a.m. With those 6 ENs between the 3 homes, they had a combined level of aged care years of experience, 78 years of experience. We had to make them redundant. And it gets me quite upset because they're lovely people. They didn't want to leave. They didn't want to go. We love them. They were good ENs. They were very good ENs. And we replaced them with RN year ones with a combined years of experience, 12 years. 12 years of experience replaced. Those 78 years gone, replaced by 12 years. For what?
Now, we are going to optimism. So, Tim, have you got something there?
We need to.
Maybe not. Look, I think the one thing that we've been doing, and we were actually in the media post-Christmas as one of those organisations that was experiencing an enforceable undertaking. You wouldn't have picked it up because they misspelt our company name, both the Commission and the press. But I think the thing that we did when trying to work out how we could make this as easy as possible for the people providing care, when we got our calculators out, we worked out that for each 2 residents, we needed one 7.6-hour shift. in one of our homes that had higher ANAC. And when you say that out loud, it's really quite shocking. 2 residents, 1 7.6-hour shift. That's the ratio. If you want to bring it to a ratio, that's it, 2 to 1. It's crazy.
I think we all agree with that. Let's change focus now to employment. I think it would be fair to say that if we were to bring the elephant on the table, there's a perspective that as a mid-size residential provider, if you don't get big, you're going to die. If you don't, innovate in a particular way, maybe you've got building structures. So let's just deal with a few of those elephants in the room.
Yeah.
And Cameron, I'm really interested in your perspective around leadership, because actually one of the critical elements Chris Baines called out is leadership is pretty important. And I guess there's a perspective that might be in the room that you can't attract the best talent because you are the mid-size. Is that true?
It's not. It's not. And we said this in our conversation, and if there's any large providers in here, keep getting bigger because you're making my job easier. Why? Look, I'm an owner, an operator, and the CEO of this company, and I suppose it's down to my ambition, what my objectives are, what am I trying to achieve. We had the opportunity, we've got the access to capital to grow very, very large, but I said to myself, it's not how am I going to make my life easier? How am I going to put food on my family's table? No, it's not about that. It came down to one very simple thing that we haven't talked about today. We've had a previous session talk about person-centered care, and we're all about that. But my question to myself, and my question to everyone here is, what is my differentiator? What is my differentiator? And I said, my differentiator actually is being a medium-sized organisation. And just like Tim and I talked about, we've got access to the capital to do what we need to do in terms of large capital works, rebuild, all that sort of thing. We've got access to all of the funds we need to get the best possible software in the industry, and we talk about that where we compare notes all the time over a beer or 10. But what we have the ability to do, and we talked about this, and we're quite fierce on this, Tim and I, we go to each of our homes. I've got 9 aged care homes around Victoria, and I know all the leadership team. And they know me, and I know the fact that I've got staff in some leadership roles, and they know that I know that they're not up to scratch. I know, and sometimes they know that I know their conduct is not becoming of the MACG way. And that level of intimacy that I have sets us apart, because it's that level of conduct that we let go and let slide is what I think drops our standards. And at our company, we don't have that problem because we're on it. We've got that level of that relationship there.
And I know this was a unifying point between the three of you. Diana, your perspectives on that point, I think, Cameron, you captured that really well. It's not an often discussed issue. There is an assumption that you just need to get big to have the economies of scale. I mean, Diana, what's your thoughts on that topic?
Yep. So I'm going to use a personal/professional example. So I worked as a regulator for about 15 years just to ensure that my daughters finished their HSC. And I was actually headhunted. And obviously, having worked in government for many years, people would question how, with my personality and drive, I could survive, but I did. So I was actually headhunted when they finished year 12 to go and work for a large size provider, which I'm not going to name. And oh my God, I thought I was in bureaucracy working in government, but I was able to influence more change than I was as a senior exec in this larger organisation. So what led me to St Basil's was, as a regulator, knowing homes that were in trouble, and after having worked for this larger organisation, taking on the challenge as a consultant to be able to influence positive change without the bureaucracy. And I haven't looked back. And I can honestly say, and I've seen quite a lot of homes, not just across New South Wales, but ACT, Victoria and Queensland, hand on heart, that particularly faith-based and community organisations are definitely going to last and be the way of the future, because we are in the health industry, we're in the care industry, and we've listened all day about the different models. And for me, people are being driven in exec positions out of aged care because of the complexities. Unless you have passion and heart, and I just can't imagine, and to your point, Cameron, somebody asked me today, where's your office? I said, everywhere, okay? For as long as I can continue to meet with staff, residents, family members, okay, and managers, and I don't even wear my title because that's where you get to see, and that's what regulators do, okay? They observe practice. So for me, you can grow, but there will always be a need, and also having a passion for people with dementia.
Oh, I think we've lost power to that.
I think it's really important to understand that as people age, they do defer back to their native country, their language, and the community feel. So I think no matter how big organisations get, that human element can never, ever be forgotten.
Yeah, and Tim, if I was to call that a superpower for being in the medium end of town, would that be one of them?
Oh, I don't think it's a superpower. It's just one of the wonderful things that we get to experience. You know, I walk into the homes and sometimes we tour people around and they say, how do you know so many people? Well, I've worked here for 11 years, that helps. But to have residents walk up, I have residents ring me. It's awesome. You know, we've got one guy who manages a race team. He'll ring me to say, do you want to come down and watch the car that you're sponsoring race on Sunday? Another bloke who rings me and says, the works you're doing here are annoying me a bit. Could you just quieten them down at lunchtime? I said, sure. And we have residents speak at board meetings, and it's the bloody best part of a board meeting because I get them to talk as long as I possibly can because it distracts the board from the stuff they're going to annoy me about.
CEO quiet strategy there. The other, let's go back to one of the other elephants in the room, which I want to circle back over, which is the perspective, which I think Cam touched on as well, in terms of scale and impact. And I think there are some smaller providers in the room that might be feeling the pressure that they've got nowhere to go. Can they go to medium or do they have to get out? From being in the middle, what would you say are the key investments that you would be looking at that helps you to thrive in the middle? And I know, Cameron, you talked about technology in that space. So can I invite you to comment on that?
Sorry, Diana. I think that does still work. Technology is hugely important, and to have a tech advisor, maybe not the size of Cognizant, but someone who is there to create some level of architecture as well as a roadmap is critically important to your ERPs, what else you're operating, your dashboard,
but it's
et
in
cetera.
your reach, Cameron. You can afford it.
That's
like, what's the go here?
We have been. We're continuing to upgrade, and we're always looking at what's the best of class. And I think Tim and I talked about, and I think that at the start of this discussion, we said to each other, Tim, what was the sweet spot? Remember we were talking about that? And it's between that 800, 1,200 beds. We were big enough. We had the revenue pool to be able to have access to the best. But that intimate size where Tim was saying he's getting phone calls all the time from residents. So look, innovation and technology, it's got to be the forefront of that, and it's a differentiator. Tim?
Go, Tim.
I think it's the compliance too. And, you know, I hate to say this, but we used to have a compliance team of 1. We've now got a compliance team of 3, and they run pretty hard. But I don't know, you know, that's 10 homes, right? So how do you replicate that level of work in a single home? That cost simply, to me, sounds really hard to manage. I think the tech you can probably do at a single site. It's for me now the compliance. For you guys running single homes, I don't know how you're managing compliance. That to me sounds like the hardest part at the minute.
Did you want to add something else, Diana?
Yeah, so a different lens to that is really establishing great partnerships with specialised services, both clinical, non-clinical, and looking at the, residents' needs, goals and preferences holistically as well. And I think that enables better partnership, better, and the clients and the consumers actually benefit from that, and they have access to better specialised services as well. So that's the benefit and a workaround to some of these things. And being locked into contracts, and again, as I said, having specialists, so physios, audiologists, dentists, art therapy, and making sure, and the other critical thing is, we're not a hospital, we're a home. It's supposed to be a home-like environment. And I think just going back to the care minutes, that's the other flaw in the system. on a positive, things will change, I'm sure.
Yeah.
But the negative is that we're focusing on just care minutes and registered nurses. What about all the other allied health professionals and meeting and the social components that should be counted for, and the non-clinicians that add to a person's life?
We're between now and afternoon tea, so I'm going to ask each of you, please call out one elephant in the room that you want to kind of debunk, because I think there are some elephants in the room. Have we already kind of touched on all of them? Tim, I'll go to you first.
I think the supply thing across the whole sector for me keeps me up at night. So the thought of having older people not getting the care they need is terrifying to me.
Yeah, thank you. Diana?
For me, the aged care system is so difficult to navigate through for everyone, particularly the older person and their representatives. And also I think the funding model, we've talked a lot about it, but is still incredibly flawed.
Yeah, Cameron, your last say.
Well, I'd agree with both of you, but again, we've talked about it already. Where are we going to find the care workforce shortage?
Yeah. Look, I think we're over time. Hopefully in the 25 minutes that we have, I think we're on time, and hopefully you enjoyed the panel. Lots of dialogue across each of our speakers. So thank you very much, all three of you.